Okay. Hi, welcome to the first episode of the Vagina Dialogues. I'm so excited. My name is Shirley Weir. I'm the founder of MenopauseChicks. And as many of you know, I am on a mission to disrupt how we think about and how we talk about many aspects of women's health. And I'm a firm believer that the way we have traditionally talked about some topics under the women's health umbrella is actually getting in the way of too many women getting the health care and support and information that they need. So it's my hope that this series will help put a stop to some of the outdated myths and misinformation and begin to empower women to talk about, well, their vaginas. But even more importantly, to understand how critical vaginal health is to our overall health. So this is episode 1, and I'm going to introduce you to our first guest in just a minute, who's also a women's health advocate, and in my opinion, a badass one at that. But first, I need to give out 2 shout outs. The first is to Eve Ensler, who is the well-known Tony Award-winning playwright and probably most famous for the Vagina monologues. So I do hope as we go through this that I remember to say Vagina dialogues because this is a conversation. But huge shout out to Eve and all of the women before us who are doing this important work. And secondly, I do want to, I was just talking to our guest before we started. I want to give a little plug for the MenopauseChicks vaginal moisturizer. This was a product that started in the MenopauseChicks community because so many women came to us and said that they were looking for another option. They had maybe been told by their healthcare provider that this was something that happens to women. They may have been on hormone replacement therapy, but it wasn't actually doing enough of the support in the vagina health area that they needed. So they were looking for something, if there was something else. And then there was a group of women who had been on hormone therapy and had stopped and then realized that they needed support for their vaginal health. So I took that quest to our friends at Pure Pharmacy, who compounded this hyaluronic acid vaginal moisturizer. And if you want to read the reviews of some of our fellow members who are using it and benefiting from it, you can go to moisturizervagina.com. All of the reviews there are from fellow MenopauseChicks members. And if you have any questions at all, please join us in the MenopauseChicks community and we would be happy to address them. Okay, let's get started. My guest today for the Vagina Dialogues is Dr. Cara Denicio. She is a naturopathic doctor and clinical director at Health Squad in Owen Sound, Ontario. And if you live anywhere in or around Grey Bruce, Owen Sound, or southwestern Ontario for that matter, I invite you to check out healthsquad.ca. She has taken care of some of my very dear friends. Dr. Cara describes herself as a sparkly, geeky lady doctor in heels. I already called her a badass because I know she is helping to change the world through her work. So with that, welcome, Dr. Cara.
Thank you so much, Shirley. I am so excited to be here. It's really an honor to, you are such a shining light in women's health. And I feel like it took me some courage to kind of come out and start speaking up about some things that I was noticing. And you really are leading the way in this. And you are a bright light that I am honored to follow. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing this passion. And you have some things to share with us today about what you as a doctor want women to know about their vaginas. But I'd like to kickstart this conversation, if it's okay with you, by pointing everyone to your Instagram feed. So
Yes.
please go and follow at Dr. Kara ND, ND for naturopathic doctor. And come on, can you please tell us, I've just been staring at your post from yesterday. So I'm going to let you explain what you shared yesterday on your Instagram and more importantly, why.
I'll have to bring it up from memory what the actual words were. Do you have it there? I'd have to grab my phone.
Oh, that's okay. I got it.
You got it?
I got it.
I was driving in the car and I had seen a couple patients recently that had said, oh, I don't, I brought it up to my doctor and it was, use some lube or, oh, I didn't write that on my intake form, but now I'm comfortable with you. I'll talk to you about it. And so I was feeling really mad. And I'm like, what if there was an equivalent of vaginal dryness or vaginal atrophy in men? And I don't want to ever compare, or dichotomize like men's health versus women's health. But it was just posed a question like, what if there was? Would it be any different?
I totally understand. Like this is, we advocate for women's health. It's the majority of what we do, but it's not about a comparison. But in order to change the conversation, sometimes we need to shine a big bright light on the gaps. And this is, as you pointed out, one of the gaps. So I'm going to read it. Go to Instagram, follow Dr. Kara ND. I'm going to read you her post from yesterday. Well, yes, your penis is dry, cracked, and getting shorter and narrower. It's just part of being a man, said nobody ever.
Nope. Nope.
And so that is like a real life. I mean, it's funny, but it's also sad. I can say that. That's a real life scenario that we've both heard from women. And that is that it's just part of being a woman.
And that's not good enough. And that's why, and I mean, I love to educate with some humor, like my page isn't for everybody, but I think it's as women, we can laugh at the ups and downs of being a woman. Like it's actually really fun sometimes and sometimes really not. And so I think when we can use some humor and just like, just some fun, but also some like that was, I hesitated to post that. I was like, eek, should I press the button on this one? But sometimes you got to say bold things to create change. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, and I'm glad you did because we don't know. Maybe that's sparking other conversations.
A couple of the comments were like, wait, what happens? Whoa, hold on. I didn't know that. Right. So maybe that's 2 or 3 or 4 women who, are more informed moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of getting informed and moving forward, will you please share with us, what is it that you want women to know about their vaginas and vaginal health?
Sure. Should we start with a little bit about vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. This is, you've had some stats and I've had some stats, depending on what paper or article I've read. Let's just say a huge percentage of women at some point of their life experience vaginal dryness. Vaginal atrophy is just the medical term we use for it. And vaginal dryness is more kind of the outcome or how you or women might experience it. And vaginal atrophy in medical terms is when we see kind of a thinning or drying or kind of more breakable tissue of the vagina. And it can be the vaginal walls, but it can also be the external part, so the vulva, and it also can be the bladder and the urethra, because all of those tissues develop at the same time, and they all, what they have in common is that they all really require estrogen. And so estrogen is kind of their magic. And so this is something that women experience off and on throughout their life because it's not a condition of aging. It's a outcome of having lower estrogen levels. Now, there are other causes of vaginal dryness, like maybe irritation or, products people are using. It doesn't always have to be about low estrogen, but that's really by and large what we're looking at. So times of a woman's life, like postpartum or breastfeeding, that one shocked me. I was like, wow, what's happening here? Women going through certain cancer treatments or some medications. But the most common time we see this is the hormone change around menopause. And as those estrogen levels drop, that's when this becomes just more apparent, or I guess a longer term thing that we as women are experiencing. And as I said, I think somewhere between 30 and 80%, depending on the research paper I'm reading. I don't quite know where that is. But even if it's 30 or even if it's 10% of women, that's too much of something that's very, something we can assess and treat quite simply and very, very effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the thing that really hit me, I mean, besides the fact that I had so many women coming to the community and, either thinking that there were no options available or just really wanting another solution that was viable for them. The thing that hit me compared to all of the other conversations that we have was that there is this overlying umbrella to the conversation around menopause that you can suck it up and you can, quote, get through it. And that could be true for X percentage of women. Sleep does get better, perhaps. Sure. Your hot flashes might dissipate. But the thing
after
that really
7 years or so.
Yeah, after 7 years. Right?
Just 7 years.
Their quality of life. But we're all different and those things can happen. Your moods can get better, right?
Yeah.
The thing that really hit me was vaginal dryness is the one experience that doesn't get better with time.
No. It doesn't get better with time. And it's, when we're talking about this, it might not seem like, to some people who haven't experienced it yet, it might seem like, oh, well, it's just a little uncomfortable, or it's a little itchy, or, maybe it burns a little bit, or, sex is not quite as comfortable. So those are some of the ways we experience vaginal atrophy or vaginal dryness, where it's like burning or itching or irritation, or even increased infections, like susceptibility to infections, because we need that nice, plump, juicy lining to prevent infection and actually improve the vaginal pH, which we can talk about later. And then the bladder symptoms too, painful urination or chronic UTIs. So it's not just about being a little bit uncomfortable. And for some women, this gets so impactful. We know this can significantly impact quality of life. It impacts sexual health, which impacts quality of life and enjoyment and pleasure, which we have every right to have as much as possible. And so, yeah, it's not just a little bit of, irritation. I have some women who can't wear their jeans anymore, right? Or can't wait till the summer because they just want to wear a sundress because it's that uncomfortable. Wow. And so the sequelae, like the outcomes of this, and I even take it further and further, like looking at women, like our elders in care homes. Yes. It's just, it's shocking, the state that it could get to and what the care would be at that stage. So as a naturopath, prevention is my like lifeblood and motto. And, this is something that we should take care of just like the rest of our health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know what you mean, and get kind of overwhelmed with the number of women who are potentially not having conversations like we are today, potentially suffering in silence, potentially believing that this is yet another thing that is just part of being a woman, and it's not. So take us back to, I don't know, let's pick an age. What do you want to say to the 45-year-old woman?
I would even take it back to I just had my 40th birthday last year. Actually, it was last year. it's fresh in my mind. And it's funny. I did a hormone course, like a hormone prescribing course a few years ago.
I remember.
And yeah, the instructor was a little, is very male perspective. And there wasn't a lot of femininity in the course, which is okay. I'd like to learn from anybody. But I remember him saying 40 is the magic number, ladies. Like your hormones will change at 40. And at this point I was like 37. I'm like, no, they won't. And obviously there's a variation, but now that I'm 40, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to see, right? Just like, and I'm very in tune with changes, but they're there. And it might even be windows or snapshots within a menstrual cycle earlier on for women who are still cycling.
Right.
And you might even get glimpses of that in parts of the cycle where estrogen's a little bit lower, right? Like right before your period or during your period or just after ovulation, there's a little dip there. So yeah, I think there definitely is a change, and that's going to be different for every woman. So some women might not notice it right up till their hormones change around menopause. So there's a huge variation of how we experience this.
And if we are in that early 40s age range, what can we do? Mm-hmm. And who can we talk to?
Yeah, I would just say, one, we'll get to this, but pay attention, know what your vagina feels like, know when it's starting to change, right? Like maybe you don't experience dryness all the cycle, but maybe there are windows in which you do, in which you might have to change either lubrication you're using or maybe moisturize at certain points of the cycle. Okay. But I think it's a great time just to know your body and pay attention, right? It's, and I say that, and I know you've said this about, coming up to that menopause birthday is, we plan everything for retirement, right? We'll do our RSPs. We'll invest. We'll, maybe decide that we're going to, build a 1-level house or whatever, or we're going to go traveling, we're going to retire and go traveling. So we make these long-term plans from our 30s or 40s about what that kind of midlife and beyond is going to look like for us. But why get there when you don't have your health? So you have to invest in your health and build that currency of health so you can enjoy it at that time.
Right on. Okay, so how do we invest?
Yeah. I think, should we go into our 3 things? Yeah. Okay. So what did you wanted to talk about? The first one was to look, which I kind of alluded to there. What was your incentive for bringing that topic up?
Well, I think even when I was preparing the notes for this show today, I was like, oh, here I go again. I mean, I'm calling it the Vagina Dialogues, but it's more than that. Do you know the names of your parts? Have you looked at them lately? Like, I know that there are many women that reach 50 and beyond and haven't actually had a look or know the proper names. So let's start there.
And when I was thinking of how I would talk about this, again, I started getting really mad. We'll just call it fire. Because when I was thinking the same thing. Like there's not one word, like the vagina is the muscular tube that leads, from the opening up to the cervix. And then the external parts, we can group together as the vulva. But so when I'm talking to people, I'll say vagina and then have to say, oh, and the vulva too. And I really wish I could say something for all of it. I mean, and so the other thing I was thinking of is that when you look at the roots of the word vagina, it actually means sheath. So it comes from the Latin for sheath, and penis actually comes from the Latin for sword. Mm-hmm. And I thought, how representative is that we name our vagina with respect to what it does for something else, not for us. And
wow,
I know, I was like, well, or if you think about it, we say, oh, down there, right? Yeah. Like it's a direction. We're not going to name it or talk about it, or we'll say that time of the month, right? Yeah. And so if we just look at our language of like, even just to start, our language around our vagina really needs a fine tune.
I'm terrible when a member of the MenopauseChicks community refers to down there, then I just reply back and say, do you mean your elbow? or your knee.
Oh, amazing. I've not seen you do that. That's
no,
awesome.
I'm very sarcastic, and I beg for forgiveness, but I really, really want my daughter and the next
Good.
generation and our generation to be the ones that say, no, like
Yes.
this has a name,
Yeah.
and this is how we talk about it respectfully and properly.
Yeah, for sure. So starting with the language, or just starting to just like say hello, like check in with your vagina, right? Like give it a little squeeze. Like what's she telling you? Like I really feel like it's a sacred part. I have said before, it gives life, right? Like if we're going to honor any part of any human body, like well, that's got to be up there. And so, just checking in, I do feel like there's some sort of like feminine wisdom or gut, like it's kind of an equivalent of a gut response that we can feel when we're just checking in. And then also, as you said, like a lot of women haven't looked, right? And can you imagine like not looking at like your face now and then just to make sure that everything's okay, you know? So having a look, knowing how things feel, right? Like what different parts feel like. What does your cervix feel like? That's a direct connection to your vagus nerve, to your brain. Like it's a pretty cool thing. And so we just need to look, and even just for health preventative wise, we need to make sure everything's okay. Just like we would check our breasts, right? We need to make sure everything is healthy. Like vulvar cancer is very, 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 very rare, but it almost the highest percentage of women who get it are postmenopausal. And so just, for health wise, we check our skin, we check, our breasts, we need to know what our bodies look and feel like. And I think that's really empowering when we do that.
Okay. So number one is look at it.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yep.
Now, in addition to that, you also advise that we have somebody else look at it.
Yes. Yeah. Which isn't always thought of. I mean, we would think perhaps of our pap test, which I find, the recommendations are every 3 years till the age of 70. So I think a lot of women do actually end up dropping off. They think at some point they don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to do. And I do those here in clinic. Probably your family physician or your gynecologist is the best person to do that. But I have a lot of patients who just aren't comfortable or have a lot of fear surrounding it, and are just more comfortable in my clinic environment. So we can do that. And then a pelvic floor physio also is the other place where vaginas are getting so much love from pelvic physios. I love it. It really has been inspiring to watch how pelvic physios have really owned the importance of what they're doing. And I think
education piece is
huge. It's huge. And getting a good pelvic floor physio is not just postpartum. I think during the menopause transition, that's a great time. It's at any point of a woman's life, it's a good time, but it's also another great time to really have a great pelvic floor physio on your team. So ask your friends, find a great one, and just dive in, I guess. I don't know. The education that they provide is really great.
It's educational, it's preventative. I went for my first pelvic floor physio appointment at the beginning of this year, and
cool.
And it is part of a message that we're working on. I want to challenge every woman to moisturize her vagina and to see a pelvic floor physio in 2020.
Awesome.
In addition to your PAP, it's not one or the other, it's and.
And I think where the missing piece might be, like, I love that pelvic physio is so part of the, like, lots of women know about it now, which is really great. But where I think we're not doing as good of a job is, while the pelvic physio is great at looking at the structure, it's really good sometimes, or at some point, to have an assessment of the tissues, right? So just like a physio might look at the structure of your elbow, there's probably things about the tissues, like osteoarthritis is a metabolic issue. So we have to look at what's going on inside the tissues of the joint as well. And so just having a practitioner that will, if you go to them, you're comfortable and you say, I'm experiencing vaginal dryness or these symptoms, having a look is a really important thing, because we can see, that paleness, or we can see little cracks, or we can see, we can test the pH. So that's part of what I do in every assessment is I'll test the pH of the vagina, which can tell us a whole bunch of things, which maybe we'll get to in the lube section. And actually the pH correlates really well with what the actual cells are doing. So instead of taking a sample of the cells and looking at it under a microscope, studies show that vaginal pH actually really correlates well with what the cells are doing. So there's a lot we can tell about the severity of, of the dryness or the atrophy by actually having a good physical exam. So that might be your family doctor, that really could be your gynecologist, which would be a great resource. And then some informed other practitioners would be able to do that too.
Absolutely. And just if I can add one more little piece to that is, because I'm sure that we have women who are listening to this who, have daughters and mothers. So I like to underscore that it's never too early and it's never too late. Like one of the things that I learned from my pelvic floor physio was the amount of, so first of all, I had 2 children vaginally without even knowing the name pelvic floor physiotherapist.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot since then, but at my assessment, I learned about the scar tissue that's there and that it's never too late to work with that and practice my pelvic floor exercises. I would like to say religiously, but regularly. And, it's just never too, somebody might think, oh, I'm 70, it's too late. I have to put up with this. It's not. Not at all.
Not at all. And I think, and two, there's other situations where it's good to have a good assessment, right? I see so many of my female patients who come in and have had just recurrent either bladder infections or recurrent yeast infections or bacterial vaginosis, or have been uncomfortable and didn't even know they had those and just hadn't had a culture or a swab. And so when we can get more specific as what is happening here, what is the underlying cause? Is it a pH issue? Is it a vaginal microbiome? So the good bacteria in the vagina? Are you using things that are irritating the area? Like when we can really sit down for a good amount, of time, and that's where naturopaths really have an advantage, is we can really figure out what the root cause is and just make simple changes of things that are going to improve the health of the vagina. So those conversations can happen should happen all the time.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. And I'm going to timestamp this part of the conversation.
Okay.
Because one of the myths and misconceptions I believe that comes up occasionally, frequently in the MenopauseChicks community is women will assume that moisturizing your vagina, taking care of your vagina is only for women who are having sex or sexually active. And yes, that's important. And I hope that you'll get into that in a second, but the UTI, the potential for, preventing incontinence, that's huge. That's our quality of life for the second half of our life. So really grateful that you brought that up.
Yeah, that's an important one. And it's too, those kind of things are things that women tend to either not ask for help for or might try to deal with on their own, right? You can go to the pharmacy and, get an over-the-counter, lubrication or an over-the-counter yeast treatment. And that's fine if it's a one-off, but, sometimes it's good to dig deeper and have good vaginal health, just really figure out what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. So look at it, have someone else look at it. And the third thing that you want us to know is actually something that I learned from you just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And that is, we were talking about moisturizers and lubricants and the difference and how to shop for them. So I'm just going to let you take it away.
Okay. Lubrications are for sexual activity. Okay. So they are not a vaginal moisturizer. They are just for play. They're for fun. I know a lot of women probably have been using them just to help relieve dryness, but yeah, they are definitely just for fun. And no matter what kind of fun, solo with someone else, whoever it is, whatever kind of fun you're into, they're really important, especially as you are having more vaginal dryness and perhaps that natural lubrication isn't there or isn't sufficient enough. I do think having regular sexual activity and fun and play actually keeps the vagina, it actually releases its own lubrication, which is a actual great treatment for vaginal dryness.
Yeah, it'd be one of the options on our menu, right?
Why not use that option? That sounds good to me. So lubrication is something you might want to add, and it's important because as I was looking at the different formulas, I think I get angry a lot, Shirley. As I read research, I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. So a lot of lubrications are actually going to cause harm. They're not formulated in a way that that goes with vaginal physiology or vaginal biology. And that makes me really mad that the things that are on the shelf are things that might be causing harm. And some women might already be experiencing this where they try a different lubrication and they get a yeast infection or it really burns, or, they might have naturally found that out. But there's two things we want to look for, more than two things. Three things we want to look for in a lubrication. The first I'll just say is as little chemicals as possible. Right. I don't want to get into specifics of that, but if you can do your research and have as little as possible.
List.
Yeah. If it's like this long, it's just like food. If it's this long, maybe we don't put it on our vagina. But the two things that really came up in research as to the importance of the makeup of the lubrication are the pH of the lube and the osmolality. Okay. So the pH is easier to explain. So the pH of the vagina before menopause is generally around 3.8 to 4.5. After menopause, it does go up a little bit, and that is a result of the lower estrogen levels. It can healthily sit a little bit higher, but when the pH gets a little bit too high or too alkaline, that's when we get imbalances and vaginal infections and things like that. So it is really important. This is what I use in clinic. It's from Amazon, just little pH strips. So if you don't have access to a practitioner who is doing vaginal pH, it's kind of a neat science experiment to figure that out.
Yeah.
But so the pH of lubes, though, should be around the natural pH of the vagina. You'd think that would be very obvious. So, in the 3s, in the 4s, maybe maximally in the 5s. But a lot of lubrications, I have my chart here.
Which is also on Instagram.
Yeah, it is on my Instagram. Yeah, some lubrications are up at 7, like way, way, way too high. Like Astroglide is at 7. And so that chart does show you some that are in the more natural biological range. I will say too, and I got this wrong actually on a podcast I did with Dr. Jordan, is that coconut oil actually is up at 7 too. So I know a lot of
and
I didn't realize. I know a lot of women have tried or do use coconut oil. And you know what? I mean, the thing is that so semen actually is up at around 7 or 8 of pH.
Yeah.
So if you can have sex without a condom and your vagina naturally goes back to the acidic afterwards and you're not having problems, this might not be a big issue for you. But if you're really getting chronic infections or really a lot of irritation, it's going to be better if we can keep the lube around the natural pH of the vagina. So that's one consideration you want to look for. And then where I really got going was looking at the osmolality. So this is kind of going back to high school chemistry. But osmolality basically means the number of particles per volume. Okay. So something that is has high osmolality means it has lots of particles within that water volume. And so what happens is the body naturally tries to balance out. So water from the vaginal wall will actually come out and go into the lube, which is maybe fun for the fun. But in the long term, it actually is causing major problems.
Right.
And so lubrications, like for example, the two most common lubrications I think most of North America use are probably Astroglide or KY jelly.
Mm-hmm. Good
cost, easily any pharmacy, right? Those are probably the biggest brand names. Astroglide, sorry, I should back up. The osmolality of the vagina is 280. The World Health Organization says that lube should be less than 380 and at the very most less than 1200. Okay. So Astroglide and KY jelly both have osmolalities of close to 8 to 10,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Or even Replens, which is sold as a vaginal moisturizer, has an osmolality of 1500. And we can even go to the research here when I start to sound like a conspiracy theorist, as naturopaths sometimes wonder, because we think out of the box, right? And we're like, is this really true? But when you look at the research, what they do is they actually test this in slugs. So I feel bad for the slugs because they don't get the fun, but I'm assuming it's called the slug mucosal irritation assay. I don't really know how they do it. I didn't really look that far, but basically they put the lube on the slug and see how, because a slug is like a mucous membrane, right? It's like the membrane of the vagina. So they see how much irritation it causes. And the Replens and KY, which they say are hyperosmolar, both caused mild to moderate irritation. And the Astroglide caused severe irritation and tissue damage.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you said you think naturopaths are conspiracy theorists, I disagree.
Okay, good.
I'm thinking, my career was in marketing, 30 years as a marketer. I think I'm also a conspiracy theorist sometimes too, because I pick up those brands that you named. They are easy to get at any pharmacy, any Walmart, whatever. And women are so effectively marketed to that whatever it says on the front of the box gets us to spend the money. Let's say it's $25 or $30 without reading the ingredient list. Mm-hmm. If you turn the package around and you realize that the first ingredient is, let's just say it's water, then first of all, that's a lot of money to be spending on water. And water is drying. And now what you've just explained about I'm not even saying it right. How do I say it?
Osmolality.
Osmolality.
Yeah.
This keeps us to come back and buy more.
100%. Yeah.
It's not, it's not solving the root cause, which is the vaginal dryness.
Yeah. I mean, Astroglide sounds fun. Like, give me some of that Astrogliding. But yeah, there's some, I don't know. Yeah. So
when we go shopping for lubricant, do we need your chart, or does it actually say on the package what the number is?
No, it does not say. It does not say. So the World Health Organization has some charts, but I don't know how old, I can't remember when that document was from. So it didn't have some of the newer products. The one I shared was from I think it's a sex store actually called Smitten Kitten. And their site is actually fantastic. And they have two charts of osmolality and pH of different lubrications. And I did compare some of them to the World Health Organization one, and they were similar. So I can't vouch for the source, but it seems it's all we have to go on, unless you're actually contacting. I've seen a couple start to say this is good osmolality and pH. So I'm hoping some of the really kind of good lube companies will start to do that. The ones that consistently seem to be in range is Good Clean Love, which you can get at the like at a pharmacy or any kind of women's health store, and some of this liquid, but not all of their line as well. So you really do have to dig and do your research. And I mean, I'm not paid by any lube company, so I have, I don't mind saying this, and what I've said about those other ones is definitely, you can just look it up in the research.
No, I mean, the motto is always get informed and then
Get
choose the
informed.
journey that's right for you.
Yeah.
So we will post that information, if it's okay with you,
Yeah, definitely.
below, so that you
Definitely.
can be an informed lubrication consumer.
Yeah.
And, just in the next couple of minutes, we have been talking about lubrication. As Dr. Kara mentioned, lubes are for fun. Everyone should use them. I call them a catalyst. It's what's going to
Cool.
get you.
Yeah.
Lubrication is what's going to get you from A to B. Moisturization is a different conversation. So give us your blurb on moisturizing.
Yeah, definitely. I love your marketing on this, or your information on this, because it's like, you would never not consider to moisturize your face.
Right.
Like, I mean, from a young age, like, you just wouldn't not moisturize your face, right? And so I think, the vagina deserves the same love. And especially at those times in a woman's life where there might be a more natural lower estrogen level, and women are even more experiencing some vaginal dryness. It's something that we need to do in order to, one, prevent going to those places, prevent the vagina from, as I said, and equating it to the penis, but like, the atrophy can get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better on its own as long as that estrogen stays low. And so we need to do something in order to just take care of it, just like we have personal care for the rest of our body. And so why I love the Pure Integrative vaginal moisturizer is that it's based on hyaluronic acid, which, again, when I geek out on the studies, it is so solidly beneficial for improving, like, hydrating the lining of the vagina, adding moisture and locking in moisture, and improving how the vagina feels. And the nice thing about that is it's over the counter. It's not something you need your doctor to prescribe. It doesn't have the hormones in it. And so you can use liberally or as often as you want, right? Because it really helps. And I have many patients who are ordering it from BC direct to Owen Sound and really have found it to be really, really a huge difference in the way their vagina feels.
Yeah, well, and thank you for spreading the word. It's one option. So we want them to know that there is a menu of options, and one of them is not suffering in silence. So you mentioned earlier, like, having lots of sex and orgasms helps keep the natural lubrication. And we've talked about hyaluronic acid. There's also localized estrogen therapy. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So this would be, I have a lot of patients who will start, and like, moisturizer is like the foundation, right? It's like, here is a preventative. This is what we do every day to help either prevent it from, just if you use moisturizer on your face every day, it would help keep it nice and healthy, right? And so the moisturizer is a great foundation or base. Although some women find at some point, perhaps as their estrogen has been lower for longer, that isn't cutting it anymore. And for lots of women, it's all they ever need. But I have lots of patients who, perhaps as they have less estrogen over time, they need to add a more hormonal based, or actually replace the estrogen back. And there's a lot of fear over hormone replacement. And I mean, I talked to MenopauseChicks Wyerton and did a whole 2-hour talk on hormone replacement and risks, and actually what we don't talk about is the benefits. But low dose vaginal estrogen locally delivered right to the vagina, or possibly to the vulva if we're using a cream, is really re-estrogenizes the tissue, so that the tissue can do its job of kind of creating the right pH and hosting all the good bacteria. We're just really giving the estrogen so that the whole vaginal ecosystem is a little bit happier. And there's lots of ways. That's something you'll have to talk to your family doctor or gynecologist or naturopathic doctor, as we prescribe these as well. And there's many options. There's rings, there's tablets, there's creams. I use something called vaginal estriol, which is a bit more weaker form of estrogen that really works well in the vagina, but it doesn't seem to have the same effect in the breast and uterus. So a lot of women love the safety of that. And in fact, I compound that with hyaluronic acid. So it's like a double whammy.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So important. I mean, we haven't said this yet, but it comes up quite often. And that is the fact that this is a relatively new phenomenon. Like 100 years ago, many women did not live past 50. So we are now, fast forward, science can keep us alive forever, but we're still reaching menopause at 51. And we have, 3, 4, 5 more decades of good quality life left in us, but we need support.
Yeah, science should help your vagina too. Like science does cool things. Like why not utilize science to help our vaginas too. So, and there's other options, right? So there's vaginal estrogen. I'm starting to use vaginal DHEA in conjunction with another prescriber, which has really great research. In fact, it's one of the only drugs approved for improving painful, like mild, moderate to severe painful intercourse. We can get into, I know you've got lots of great experts on vaginal laser therapies. There's a whole bunch of, there's different levels of how we can approach this, and there's no one size fits all. Every woman is going to really benefit more from one therapy over the other. And so those are conversations that you should have with, an informed women's health practitioner, no matter what their title is. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Oh my goodness. I could chat with you all day. I hope you'll come back so we can continue this conversation. I want to thank you for your time and your expertise today. I want to invite everyone to follow Dr. Kara at Dr. Kara ND on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me everywhere at MenopauseChicks. And on June 18th, both Dr. Kara and I will be speaking at Kim Vopney's event. It's called Kegels and Cocktails. It's virtual this year. So it's June 18th. You can go to Kim Vopney is the Vagina Coach. Go to the Vagina Coach and get all of the information. We'd love to see you there. And there'll be more great information that night. So
yeah, it's going to be fun.
Oh my gosh. The first episode of the Vagina Dialogues. Thank you so much.
That was so much fun. I love sharing our women's health fire together. I think it's important.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shirley. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody.